So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regen Ray. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. I'm Regen Ray, your host, and today I am very excited to be joined by today's guest, someone who I've been following on YouTube for a very long time. And if you know, I did the keto diet for a very long time, and these videos that Dr. Eric Berg made were just phenomenal. His whiteboard explanations and the way that he broke things down made real sense to me, and I was sharing his videos everywhere. And one day I got an email from him and he was talking about soil, and I was so excited. I was like, we need to have a yarn on the conversation of our podcast. Dr. Eric Berg, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to go deep into soil because I know that you come from a kind of background of science and the real kind of scientific side of things, but you've just recently discovered the power of soil like a lot of us. And the soil lovers would love to hear a little bit about who you are and what led you to your love of soil.
You can't escape the true origin of health by ignoring the soil, because that's where it all just begins. And so I kept going down this rabbit hole, of trying to help people. And in the very beginning, you're giving people all these nutrients and things like that, which is good. But then we can't really truly help someone without getting them on the right eating plan with their foods, right? But then where do you find actual food? Recently, I stopped off to some on the side of the street, on the side of the freeway, a grocery store, trying to find food in this. I'm looking around on the aisles. I'm like, I can't eat any of this stuff. It's all canned food. It's all dead. I'm like, okay, so maybe I can have some guacamole there. I'll have some nuts. But the point is, it's very difficult nowadays to find like food that's really enhanced. And, when we talk about nutrient dense, that's kind of a superficial thing. It's like what really makes those nutrients is the workhorses, the microbes. And you got the microbes in the soil and the microbes in the plant, microbes in our body, and we can't live without them. And so I think it's really important to emphasize that, and we're going to be talking about that today.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I really want to know during the conversation if you know where this kind of got taken out. Recently got someone who's quite unwell, went to the doctors, and we bring up the topic of food and sleep. Oh no, they're different topics. Let's just go into this. And it's like, how can food and sleep be so admitted to our rejuvenation and our ability to repair? And and I guess I've always heard stats where people who go through a medical degree, they don't spend a lot on food and nutrition unless you're going to become a dietitian, and then even then it's skewed by who's maybe funding the research and things like that. So can you talk to that a little bit? Like, where do we go wrong to take food and nutrition so much out of this medical healing world?
The medical profession or the healthcare field is so the opposite of what it should be. It's like, you take all these truths and just go the exact opposite direction. And that's what the medical profession is. So that's where I get a lot of content, and then all of a sudden, so I'm doing videos on a lot of, opposing viewpoints just on everything across the boards. And then I started looking at farming and agriculture. And I'm like, wow, it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. So, unfortunately, I don't know exactly when it began, but, they're trying to bypass Mother Nature and the microbes. And we're just going to give fertilizer to the soil. We're just going to use pesticides then and just wipe out the whole microbiome. But, the whole thought in the past, because you can't see these microbes in our body, was that, our bodies are sterile and seeds are sterile, and but they're not. And also even a fetus in a womb is not sterile. Believe it or not, they find all sorts of the microbes that support the immune system. And so this very omitted piece of information, unfortunately, has led to a lot of problems. If you just take an antibiotic, for example, now you just took away all the things that keep the funguses in check. We get yeast infections now. They become more pathogenic. And now you end up with all sorts of additional problems. So then you take a fungicide. Well, now you create an overgrowth of bacteria. You turn them into pathogens. So we have a lot of interesting relationships with microbes. Like, a lot of them are benefiting us. Some don't bother us and we don't bother them. But then the relationship between that microbe and the host cell changes when the environment changes. So you can have somewhat friendly microbes in our gut, that will then turn unfriendly if you stress them out. And the same thing happens in the soil.
Yeah. And I love the fact that I see more research coming to this links between the soil biome, the gut biome, and then those even links between the mental health and the abilities of our bodies to self-regulate. And I think it's really key that you mentioned as well that in the right environment, something that could be a pathogen then is no longer seen as bad, or the balance of it becomes good. And I think sometimes when we take these isolated viewpoints of this particular fungi or bacteria is bad, but it's bad when it's in high population and we're not doing the right stuff to bring it in low population. So what are some of the things people can do to be a little bit more aware of that? Is it just eating better quality food, or, is regeneratively grown beef in a McDonald's burger a good step or not a good step just because it has this buzzword of regeneratively grown in front of it?
Yeah. That's they're using all sorts of buzzwords to get people to buy stuff. But I think you just have to increase you got to realize that the microbiome is a higher level of importance than it was before. So you have to take that in consideration in all aspects of eating. Like, for example, if you eat sterilized foods, pasteurized food, cooked foods, like cheese, and you have it pasteurized, you don't get those microbiome like you would in raw cheese that I think you can get in your country or Europe, but in America, it's difficult. So you have that. And then you also have, overly cooked vegetables, overly cooked meats. If you start doing a little bit more raw, that's going to be helpful. And also the vegetables, and this is something I think we'll get into, are filled with a microbiome. And unless they're grown on sterile soil, which a lot of them are, if they're grown on good soils, like from the farmer's market or stuff that you grow, boy, you have this additional X factor, which is the microbiome in the plant that it can benefit you. So that is something that's brand new. And I think you probably have talked about it many times, but I think it's going to be the wave of the future, because if you make that connection, now glyphosate, which is considered an antibiotic, they patented it as an antibiotic, wow, which is this all over the place, becomes like, wow, everyone's now can work even harder to avoid buying any foods that have that chemical in it, and also start to look at food from a different angle, not necessarily how it looks, but where it's grown, and really, encourage the farmer to or support the farmers that are taking care of the nutrient density, because that's like way more important than anything else. I mean, you can put amendments in there, but if there's no the biology in there, it's going to be hard to for the roots to actually eat the bacteria, which has recently been found to be one of the main sources of nutrition for that plant, which is brand new information for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's crazy that this is like brand new information and we're just starting to research it. Like we're talking about living on Mars and we know about like random fish that exist in the deep ocean. And yet we've never stopped to really just look under our feet and explore this skin of the earth that is basically keeping us all alive, and everything is basically derived because of the soil, topsoil and the carbon and so forth. So what are some of the exciting researches that you're coming across that really kind of lights you up and that you would like to see more funding or more attention to?
A lot of the interesting people that are into this, they don't really advertise. They're hard to find on YouTube or even they don't do YouTube videos. So I happen to luckily stumble on various people that then, it's just huge, interesting pieces of data that you just want to go take a walk and go, wow, that's amazing. Like, for example, Dr. James White, PhD, he's been studying fungus for the last 30 years. In the last 13 years, he was the guy that made everyone aware of how the roots eat microbes. And these microbes, bacteria in the root, are called endophytes. And so they extract the nutrition and spit it out. And so he shared with me some information from I think it's called the Indian tribe. What is it? It starts with an I. It's some Indian tribe that used to grow what's called magic corn, and they would take the grasses and the roots and grind them up and then heat them up. And believe it or not, when you heat them up, you kill some of bacteria you don't want in there, but certain ones go into a spore formation and come right back out when you cool it down. And then he mixed the seeds. They mixed the seeds with these, I think it was squash, corn, and some other vegetable. And it was called the magical corn because in the vegetables, because it would just grow like crazy and taste really good. And now we know why. It's because you're adding this kind of the starter microbe to help the seed. And so I'm doing that experiment right now. I'm doing an experiment on everything to see what happens. And so I'll share that with everyone, but it's so simple. I know a lot of people are trying to keep this research secret, so they can patent it, but you can't patent it. And it's going to be really easy to go in your backyard and grab what you need in the woods or near a pond or something, and use that to enhance your plants and your vegetables as you grow.
Yeah, and do you still feel like there are a lot of people who want to keep this secret? Because I know a lot of I know in the farming world and like some of the people I meet, it's like we need to move really fast. There's a bit of like sense of urgency, which I think we definitely have to have. And that's one of the dilemmas that's always happened in nature, is that you can't patent something that is natural. So they've always had to like create a synthetic version in order to create these patterns and so forth.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you think this whole pattern world is restricting research, or do you think there's some self-funded labs out there that are really creating some magic, but just they're not getting the attention because they're so small and underfunded?
If you do research on inoculants for seeds, seed inoculants, there's a lot of different research labs that are doing this because they want to develop products, but they keep it secret. Okay. They don't want to share that information.
Yeah.
And so they'll have proprietary blends and things like that. But the principle is like very, very simple. But yeah, so there's these patents, of course, they're trying to patent everything. And even like some of the technology, the CRISPR technology, which is a kind of a new name for GMO, because they know GMO has a bad name. It's not gonna work. It's not going to work because when you start manipulating genetics, there's so much we don't know. I mean, and it's just too complex. We're like light years away from ever figuring that out. And so they're not going to figure it out. They'll end up creating problems, damage with the environment, but they're not going to be able to figure it out simply because the complexity of the DNA. I just started getting into DNA, and the more I learn, the more I realize no one knows anything about it. I'm talking like it is so highly complex, and you have stuff in DNA transcription that works backwards. I mean, like what? We talk about like everything starts with DNA. Well, some things start from RNA. Like what the heck? So it's just very, very mysterious and complex, and they're not going to figure it out. They'll try, but that's why I think right now we just need to focus on Mother Nature and let nature do its thing.
Yeah,
work with nature.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the regenerative farmers that have gone down this path have realized that once they get through what's known as the dip of despair, that real hard transitional phase, they then see the tipping point and they wonder, why did I ever do it that way? But that's such a hard kind of point to get to. And then you start realizing that working with nature means that you do less things and the ecosystem kind of just repairs itself. And we talk about conventional farming and going back to traditions and just kind of farming the way that maybe a few generations ago did, because it all just changed very soon. Like you zoom out and you look at the history and the timeline of food, it's only really recently. And I kind of think it's more linked to like the 71, removing the gold and the dollar standard and just unlimited amount of, capitalism money supply. And you see everything on health curves and everything just go up since then. Do you think that, coming back from the war, having leftover kind of chemicals, not really knowing what to do with them, put them in the food was the common sense answer. I don't know what happened. Do you see similar trends that everything kind of started shifting around those 60s, 70s marks?
Yeah. And even earlier than that, if you take a look at like the Spanish flu, I think it was 1918. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Like all these people died and all of a sudden, like what happened that created this serious pandemic back then. It's very, very strange. Well, there was its date coincidence with something that occurred, which was a war and the shift from eating fresh vegetables to canned and preserved food, like across the world. And I mean, if you saw the diet of some of the soldiers, like, and everyone's like rationing stuff, they're basically lowering the nutrient levels, knowing the nutritional levels like zinc and things like that, setting themselves up for a very weakened immune system. And then bam, you start getting sick. And, but you know how most people actually died from that event? It was actually from the aspirin poisoning. They didn't know back then that aspirin in certain amounts was toxic. Wow. So they basically were just giving people like way too much, and then they were literally bleeding internally from their lungs. And so that's really what killed them. Then later on, they found, wow, okay, this aspirin's toxic. We better not give people this much. So, but that's really why the younger people died, which is interesting. But they got sick in the first place because the immune system suffered. You know, even like a pathogen in soil or in our bodies, their primary goal, like to kind of strategically overtake us, is to suppress our immune system. That's like what it's trying to do. So it has all these fascinating strategies to downgrade our vitamin D receptors, bind to our vitamin D receptors, interfere with the conversion of the inactive vitamin D to the active vitamin D. I mean, it's just like, what the? It's like there's a whole universe going on. And so these nutrients are so important in defending against these attacks by pathogens. We're constantly, so it's like support your immune system at all costs, put attention on that versus trying to sterilize your environment. And then all of a sudden now you wipe out your own bacteria. So if you have a treatment that you're going to treat anything with, if it kills off your immune system, it's not a good treatment, no matter what you're trying to do.
When you go somewhere and you trust the advice that's coming and they just give you a prescription, you say, take this for 3 weeks and you'll be back on your feet. How do you question that? Like, how do you break that paradigm to ask better questions and go do your own research? And how do you trust what you hear on this world of so much misinformation, apparently?
I think I would. That's why it's really hard for the consumer to evaluate the right information, because to do that, you have to have a basic understanding of the physiology of the body, the immune system, and they don't have that. So now you're relying on someone else. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing the YouTube video, to really, you're going to have to learn a little bit about the body so you can kind of go ask the right questions and go, you know what? Explain to me, doc, what is the true prognosis of this cancer? And like, if I give this treatment, explain to me what were the controls and this and that, and you're going to find out, wow, so it's based on really bad research. Yeah. Okay. Mice studies. Okay. So in other words, we're just winging it. All right. And you don't want me to do alternative care because of why? Because it's just all quackery. Well, have you ever looked at it? Well, no, but so there's a lot of, a lack of explaining to patients the mechanism and why they should do certain things. It's just, they're in a system, they're stuck in a system that they have to practice medicine. And it's just bizarre to me, because if you try to practice medicine over a bad diet or the incorrect diet, you're just gonna make things worse. So that's really the elephant in the room, is they just don't have that very important key of the foundation of your just a really good diet, and unfortunately the dietitians, it's just too political. They get the wrong information. It's whatever lobbyist is donating that much becomes the next food pyramid. And then that's what they have to give out.
You mentioned the food pyramid, and I think a lot of people don't know who funded the food pyramid. And can you speak to that a little bit, and like why you make that comment of like, who's the donors that designed the next food pyramid?
It's a revolving door between government, FDA in America, and also industry. It's a revolving door. Unfortunately, it's a lot of favors and a lot of corruption. Like, for example, on the board, the panel, they have these so-called independent panels that of nutritionists and experts that have all sorts of other funding they get and payments that, I mean, it's just ridiculous as far as, it's so corrupt. It's so corrupt. Even like, for example, the studies that are done for big pharma, for example, those studies are funded by somehow you fund them, the taxpayers, and which is the government. And then, so they get to get funding for a product that they create that then you have to buy. You have to pay for insurance to buy it. So you end up paying twice, and even like, unfortunately, the farmer, like certain things that are subsidized, right? And so we pay the taxpayers, pay the farmer for making certain products that then they have to sell. Then we have to buy it again. Wait a second. We already paid initially for all that soy and corn and wheat. Don't we get a discount?
Yeah. It is very much a, scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. And, I say on the mic all the time is that, the skincare industry would never fund that water is better for your skin. They just wouldn't fund it. And so how do we ever know that is true? Because no research lab's going to put that kind of money to put themselves out of business. In fact, they will fund that you need to apply something 6 times a day, for it to be beneficial or to get double the results, So that's, the kind of questioning that I do and go, well, when does I keep saying that we need all funding to have like a 3% that goes to a mad scientist fund, just for all these crazy ideas that people can go and, self-fund and research in their own bedrooms and, garages, because that's where a lot of that research happened originally. Now you got to wait to get funded before you can test an idea. And if you don't get funded, you shelf it, you get labeled quack, so.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot more people speaking out to their more quack ideas and feeling comfortable. And I think, even that word maybe people link to a negative connotation, but I think, we need to celebrate the fact that some of these accidental discoveries happen, and farmers love, tinkering in the shed and mixing this with that. And that's why a lot of the, natural things that have happened is, what happens if I put worm castings on the seeds as the inoculant rather than a paid chemical? Oh, look what happened, so that shed tinkering is a really good kind of skill to have, and farmers have that kind of intuitively. So we, with the food pyramid, just to close that chapter as well, like, you can go online and see who funded it and maybe start joining your own dots. I think always do your own kind of research, and just kind of see why is the bottom pyramid part the biggest and we're told to eat the most of that? Maybe that was the industry that funded a lot of the research, and what you mentioned as well is where certain industry leaders are on boards of like other groups that are meant to be like independent. You think, wow, will it be really a non-biased decision if they are the CEO of in other kind of company? I remember being at a field day once and they're talking about whether grain-fed beef was better than grass-fed beef. And the lady who was speaking, who was on the board to create the framework for the beef industry, owned a very large cattle yard and grew grain. It's like, I wonder what, votes that hand will go towards. It's just like, how have we gotten to a point that we allow this industry insider stuff be the one that defines the frameworks and the paths? So I know lately you've been spending a lot more down the soil path. What led you, what have you discovered and what kind of got you, like, I know the food and nutrition, and you mentioned before that everything's stemming from the soil. And I think more and more people are waking up to that. But what are some of the things that you're starting to discover? You mentioned before that you've seen some very similar things that are happening in the farming world and what's happened in kind of the food world. What are those kind of dots that you're joining?
Well, I think I might have mentioned that I live on a farm, and so for not very long, it's maybe a couple of years, right? So you get a lot of advice, and you're just learning as you're going. And I'm trying to learn at accelerated rate because I'm studying like 16 hours a day on it. But so I decided to enter my cattle into a study, which was comparing grass-fed to grain-fed, right? And so this study is like I don't think anyone's ever done this study. So a whole bunch of farmers from around the country, US, participated in this. So I sent my beef off into the study. And then fairly recently, maybe a couple months ago, or actually 5 months ago, I get a call from the researcher and says, we need to talk. I said, why? He said, look at this report. I'm going to send you a report right now comparing your beef to other farmers. And I looked at this chart, and it was like 3 times higher on many things. Like one would be the phytonutrients. I had no idea that phytonutrients were plant-based chemicals were actually in beef. I didn't know that. So that was 3 times higher than any other farmer in the US. And niacin, vitamin B3 was off the charts. And so we had all these great things increased, and really good ratio, like 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 to omega-3, which is unheard of. Compared to the grain, it's pretty bad. And then also other factors, inflammatory factors were the lowest. So he said basically that the animal meat that we have is like comparable to an athlete's muscle, versus the grain-fed is comparable to a diabetic's muscle. So, so that really got me interested. I'm like, why? What is so unique about my farm? I haven't spent years creating the grasses in the fields and doing the rotational things. I mean, I actually did 0. And we don't even have a lot of grass on our fields. But what I found through indirectly through James White, the guy who studied the microbes, he said that weeds have way more endophytes, microbes in them than grasses. So this is another thing we are studying right now on my property. And then I found some other data that was just the complete opposite of what a lot of farmers kind of think. Is like you have to feed cows grass. Well, they can also eat weeds. Not all of the weeds, not the poisonous ones, but the majority of weeds. And so we're always trying to get rid of the weeds, but apparently these weeds are pretty nutritious, because I've seen the report and it's just off the charts. I did a whole video on it. So, when I eat, so I have like 500 pounds of this beef in my freezer, and I was asking friends, hey, you want some beef? To go, no, now they're like calling me, can I have some of that beef? I'm like, no, I think I'm going to keep it. But it's like, when I eat it, it's like, wait a second, I just feel really good when I eat it. Like there's something about it just satisfying. It makes me feel good. But now I know why, because it's an anti-inflammatory product. So when you just buy some of the grain-fed stuff, you're eating stuff with high homocysteine, which is a cardiovascular indicator, a negative indicator for heart disease. You're eating something that's more inflammatory. And so this is just a whole new area that, we've been, it might taste good, but is it really creating health or not? And wouldn't you want food that actually has more health indicators, more nutrients? So this has got my interest big time. And so I'm going to be doing research, but I can't, it's winter here now, so I can't necessarily do any research on the weeds because I don't have anything. So that is some interesting piece of data. So I want to share that with you.
Yeah, I love that. I call it the war on weeds, this kind of made up thing that we have to kill all weeds. And on that note, soil lovers, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation on the war of weeds. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the biome on the fruit that's kind of that you mentioned before as well. So stick with us. Hello, soil lovers. I hope you're enjoying today's guest and this podcast. But I wanted to just let you know that when you get excited about soil, just as you're hearing about our guests, then you will want to check out the Soil Learning Center. The Soil Learning Center is a hub that we put together and digitalized all the content over the years that were originally on DVD into this online learning experience. So if any of our guests or any of the topics that we speak about during the podcast whet your appetite and you want to get your hands dirtier and dig deeper and get educated around different things around soil, whether it be biodynamics, permaculture, whether it be using a microscope, or whether it just be hanging out with other like-minded educators, mentors, and facilitators, then the Soil Learning Center is a place for you to hang out and dig deeper. That's the soillearningcenter.com.
microbes.com. We have lots of different programs, courses, and even a membership. So if you want to belong to a community of other soil lovers, then that's the place to hang out. Well, until we meet again, enjoy the rest of this podcast. Back to the program.
Welcome back, soil lovers. You're hanging out with Regen Ray and Dr. Eric Berg. We've just been talking about your amazing beef that you have in the freezer that no one wanted and now everyone wants. And, you made a really good point in regards to what I call, the kind of thing you are what you eat. But I think we need to go to that next level, that you are what you ate. So your beef obviously was eating good weeds and grasses. And you were talking about the whole weeds and how we've got this kind of mindset that we need to remove all the weeds and we need to have like pure monoculture kind of grasses that only, cattle eat. And I really worry because a lot of the stocking densities are all researched on the amount of grass that you have and not the weeds, And so I've seen a lot of regenerative farmers who allow their pastures to have mixed cover crops and mixed species. And then all of a sudden they're like doubling their stocking rates, but based on the regulations, they're breaking the rules, And so that research is never going to catch up because they're still trying to work out how much grass a cow eats and not really, emitting all the other weeds that and I now call weeds, signal plants, they're there to give us a signal. They're actually our communication line between our site and what's happening under the soil. And so obviously you've mentioned about the weeds and this whole idea of, we are what we ate. And you said that before about like, there's now more information about the cows eating, better quality grasses or the weeds. How is that transferred into the beef that we then eat? Because a lot of people just think it goes into the animal and it comes out as fertilizer on the other side and it doesn't affect the meat. How is it working to?
Yeah, these microbes, in the cow's gut, they're making protein, they're making amino acids, they're making neurotransmitters, they're making small chain fatty acids, they're a chemical factory. And the same thing with the microbes in the plant. When the plant eats the microbe, it's extracting nitrogen, it's extracting metals, minerals, all this nutrition. And in exchange, we give them some carbohydrates. That's what they want. And they go out and they collect some more minerals and bring it back in. And so the flavor chemicals, the pigments, the antioxidants are also influenced by these microbes. Why? Because they have the same, when you look at the DNA of our bodies versus a plant versus a cockroach versus an animal, there's a bit of similarity in code. Not the whole thing, but there's definitely these codes to make different chemicals, whether that's an amino acid or carotenoid or vitamin A. These microbes can make it, and even our bodies can make certain vitamins, B vitamins. So the code for that is the same. And so we're sharing, we're coexisting, and then we're sharing things back and forth. And it's so funny because plants now, apparently, because they eat bacteria, are not really vegan. So plants are not vegan. So that gives a whole new angle for vegans eating plants. Well, you're eating something that's not vegan. It's eating bacteria.
That's a whole nother can of worms that we can, if you want to, because we have a lot of guests on this podcast and talk exactly. And I agree that, the whole movement of turning fields and fields into monoculture is causing more biodiversity collapse and animal extinction and potentially human extinction than seeing a whole system that's all integrated and has, animals playing a big part in healing that landscape and bringing back the fertility and growing more nutrient dense food, which we've just seen over and over and over, and puzzles me to why we're not, making that mainstream. And I think that's another really good point is that we go through an education system that teaches us that roots drink water, and that's all we learn. And through my discovery over the years, and I'm sure you have the same, there is this kind of exchange happening under the ground where the plants are literally saying, I always think of it like as a stock trading floor. The plant's like, I need magnesium and I'm giving you, 10 carbohydrates, and off goes the little workers to go get that and brings it back to the plant, and I see it like that kind of trading floor of just this exchange of carbohydrates for minerals and vitamins. And the research that the mycelium fungi can bring minerals from like a long way away, all the way back to the plant or the tree. You know, it's just so fascinating. And here we are tilling the soil and breaking all those pathways. And, you know, it's kind of like we rip up the internet every year and then hope that the internet stays online. You know, it's like how do we see that works? And so the plants are absorbing these amazing minerals and the animals are giving back. And then the fruit grows, you know, and we've got this system that we've got to pasteurize everything and like clean it and wax it and put it into cold storage and, you know, all these other things. Like, what have you seen being the kind of magic of like eating a bit of fruit straight off the tree and, you know, maybe giving it a little wipe? You know, that's the old way. You see in the movies, they click it off and they rub it and they eat it. What biome is on that fruit that's beneficial for human?
Well, even just like on a grape, you'll see these like this little white film, this a friendly yeast that is going to help you. I mean, even on my property, I have these different indigenous apples that are not that sweet, but boy, they are flavorful, and they're small and they're ugly as sin, and but they're delicious. And so they have blemishes, they have microbes on there. Yeah, don't scrub them. Eat the microbes on there. You know, even the microbes. If you study the microbes inside some of these weeds and some of the grasses and some of the fruits and vegetables, they're the same microbes that are in our guts and even in cows' guts. So there's this, you're supporting your gut when you're eating vegetables, not just from fiber, but from the microbes. So you're kind of inoculating and you're kind of building up your gut. And if you eat them raw, and if you eat them on soil that's, you know, unfortunately, I think aeroponics is pretty popular, and I have several aeroponic units. And, you know, so far the research is that you just don't get the complete microbiome in aeroponics like you would the soil. So again, you know, it was a good test, but I prefer food from the soil, and that's why I think going forward, I think the future it should be to support the farmers that really care about the soil and really ensure that they continue, and then we spread on their simplicity of how to do it ourselves, so we can keep this going. But I'm, you know, rather than mandate things, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, no, I want my garden, I want to grow my own food. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And that, you know, growing your own food is such a big, like, rebellious move, I guess, at the moment. It's like the best thing you can do to kind of break the system and the hierarchy that exists is to grow your own food. Yet we're being forced into, not forced, but, you know, the houses that are being designed are smaller, or there's less backyard, or we're living in apartments where you got a concrete balcony. You know, what are some of the things that people can do in those type of environments where the population is denser and probably health declining the most? You know, fermenting food or going to farmers markets. What are some of the things that you think is kind of top of the list to help people bridge that gap when they're not growing their own food in their own backyard or on a farm?
Yeah, farmers markets, sauerkraut, fermented kimchi is like really, really, really important. I try to get raw milk cheese, pickles. Fermentation is like a really, really good thing. I go to this farmer's market. Okay. So I go, and there's one guy who grows salad, and he grows it, I mean, amazingly. And there's always a long line. And so I've been going for many years to this, and I finally went to his farm, and now I'm going to work with him to, actually, I just bought some additional land to grow my own ingredients for some products that I have. And so then I can control it, and he's going to help me do that. And so going through his farm and getting a tour, like I'm going, this is amazing. People need to know this. So I'll open another YouTube channel. And what we're going to do is just show people, like, well, he's going to be showing people how to grow stuff right inside your house on a windowsill, the simplest way possible, and do a lot of maybe microgreens or lettuce type of things that you can control yourself. But he's going to show how to really grow the soil. He's been doing it forever, and boy, the amount of work that he does and the simplicity of it, and he's not adding a lot of amendments. So, but he has the formula. So I'm going to share that with everyone. So that's what we're going to be creating probably in the next month or so, because I think everyone should be growing as much food as they can in their own house or space. And it doesn't have to be expensive or take a lot of work. And I know you have a lot of training things on your site. You have courses. So you're already way ahead of me. So I think that's awesome.
Well, I just love the fact that more and more people are chatting about this importance of soil. And you even made a reference then of like growing soil, and people don't realize that, you can literally create soil, but what's stopping that from happening is these inputs that are killing the free workers, the critters underground that don't need to get paid, don't have work cover, don't need health insurance. They're working free 24/7, and yet we're killing them by putting all these inputs on, whether it be herbicide or pesticide. We're basically removing those biomes, and then expecting that doesn't somehow end up in us humans. It's just like, it just kind of blows my mind that we haven't made this more common, and that people aren't, demanding better quality stuff in the aisle. And you see people even make content in like, I'm in a generation where I've only seen supermarkets have what they've got, but my parents and grandparents, they've seen the supermarket change from what was a very, wholesome, locally sourced aisles to these mass-produced, pasteurized, pressed, every process you could possibly think, high sugars, and then put into a little packaging in plastic and called convenience. It's like convenient for now, but maybe not for later. Are you working with a lot of people? And obviously your YouTube channel has exploded over the years. Have you seen more and more people get interested? And do you think we're getting to that point where the tipping point is close, where the majority will start demanding better quality food?
Yeah. There's a huge interest in home gardening, and small farms, organic food, growing organic food. And I think for several reasons. I think the main thing is for health reasons. I think for cost reasons, because going in the future, it's a little bit uncertain. Okay, so if food's that expensive, well, I'll just grow my own, right? So it's a good insurance policy to have that knowledge. But I think the taste and the health is the reason I do it, and taste better. And I've had my videographer came to my farm, and he's not. I mean, think about this. Here's a guy who edited 6,000 of my videos, right? You would think it would rub off, and you would think that he would. But when he's watching my videos and editing, he's not thinking of the information. He's just putting everything together.
Yep.
I found it up.
Yep.
So we're walk past my garden. I says, "Hey, you got to try this asparagus." He goes, "Oh no, I don't like asparagus." No, I said, "Just try this." And he bit into it, and he's like, "This is asparagus?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "Oh my gosh, this is good. Can I have some more?" Like he's never had real asparagus. So, or a real tomato. I mean, it's like completely night and day.
That's very interesting that, that just proves the point that like submergence in a farm, or going to a farmer's market, meeting the farmer, going on a farm tour is just so key, because that experience trumps that knowledge of like someone watching all these videos. Surely something rubs off, but I agree that so many people, the task is to edit the video. The task is to go to the shop and buy the ingredients. There's no looking sideways or digging deeper into different things, or what does this chemical mean on the label? Oh, well, this is what I need to buy. It's like, if you can't pronounce it or spell it, then maybe it shouldn't be inside us either, so very, that kind of, that education of like doing, like experiencing is just so much better. And I just, in Australia, they've tried to pass laws at one point to stop these farm tours happening, like reducing the number of guests that you can have on the property, and because of biosecurity and things like that. And you think this one thing that people can go in and feel nature and pick the apple and eat it and taste the difference is kind of getting shrunk. If there's one thing that you would love to kind of just download into everyone's brains from the stuff that you've learned, like what do you think is the pinnacle information that helps that paradigm shift that we could just download into everyone's brain so they get that penny drop moment?
Well, I think it's just the definition of food. Food is supposed to not just supply fuel, okay, or fill us up. It's to nourish our bodies. And if you look at the derivation of nourish, It comes from nutrients, and the nutrients, where do they come from? They come from microbes. They come from plants. They come from animals. And so as far as the diet goes, and the basic principle that you need to really anchor is like the healthy ingredients. And also, of course, my whole thing is like low carb and ketogenic diet. But the point is that if you have real food, which exists only from soil and only with nutrient or microbial dense soils, that should be the foundation more than anything else. Because if you try to go another way, you're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. But the microbes, if the microbes are there, you can be guaranteed the nutrients are there, because they're the workhorse to mobilize and then deliver and go into the plant. And so I think that's needs going in the future. That needs to be the stable principle that everything it revolves around. And thus your whole channel is about soil, right?
Yep. Soil lovers really understanding that ability to, really not see food as something to fill us up. I think that's a really key point. And I think there's a lot of people nowadays who don't even know what the feeling of full is, because they've never hit the nourishment or the nutrients that they're craving. Even cravings, like I feel like people don't really understand that if you're craving something, it's like the alarm bell that your body needs this, and we've kind of just silence that. It's like, this whole emotion, I don't know, it's just a really weird kind of feeling at the moment where, like, really, I think you're right, like that's a really good thing to like dig deeper into, is like, what is this definition of food? It's understanding that it is to like nourish us, and like the rejuvenation of our body comes from that. What we put in helps our body rejuvenate. And I'm just so surprised that going to doctors and saying, oh, I think it's something I'm eating and it's food and I'm lacking a nutrient. Oh, no. Like, you need to just go do these blood tests and take these vitamins and, take this tablet and you'll be all okay. And it's like, I just don't feel like that sits right with me. Yet it's the norm now, and I'm the crazy one to think, no, we need to, but you're right. Soil lovers are starting to wake up from all around the world and understand that bridge between the soil, the plant, and what we eat, and then our gut health, and then our mental health, which I think is another untapped, amazing kind of area, is like, people just feeling better because of what they're feeding their biome. And maybe our biome makes decisions before our brain. That's another cool thing that Dr. Zach Bush is working on, is the fact that maybe a lot of our gut feelings and our intuition is from the gut because of the biome. And that helps us before our brain and our logic. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I love to see more of that researched and funded. So
absolutely.
Dr. Eric Berg, are you really ready to become the voice of the soil?
I've been ready. I have the t-shirt. I'm ready. So
excellent.
Yep.
Well, you are now the soil. You've embodied its powers, its vibration, its energy, and you're its mouthpiece. What would you tell us 8 billion people on the planet?
I would tell, realize that the microbiome on all levels is a part of our dynamics. It's not something over there. It coexists for a long time from the very beginning. And so we have to take care of it, and it'll take care of us. It's that exchange, that good relationship that we need, so it doesn't shift its relationship to something unfriendly.
I love that. I love the fact that you made reference to the fact that it's over there. I think that is a very key thing that humans tend to do, is say, well, it's the biome, it's over there. I don't have control. It just exists on its own autopilot, and bringing that control back and building the relationship, which you also said, I think is really important too, is it really building a relationship with the biome and being in tune with it. Oh, I eat this and I feel this, or I go for a walk in nature and this happens. And, I think that's a really key point. Anything else that's burning in your desire to share with the soil lovers before we wrap things up?
Well, I just think that I appreciate people that if you're on this long to the whole thing, I really appreciate all the attention that your interest in this. And I would just say, just continue to dive into the knowledge that you're learning and start applying it, so you can actually be a walking example of what we're talking about.
I love that. Be the beacon, the walking example That's a great way of putting it, and just shine the light. And that's why we try and create soil lovers and advocates to go out and just geek out about soil, hence the stickers and other things that you can do to put on your devices to start the conversation. Say, you're a soil lover, I'm a soil lover, let's geek out about soil, So I think more that we make this a normal conversation and not that it's dirty and germy, which is, the kind of idea is that, soil is dirty and germy. You got to wash your hands. It's like crazy. I go to community gardens and help out in the garden. Then we break for lunch and I just eat with my soil filled hands because I know that the soil is not toxic there,
Right. Yeah, that's right. I agree. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out. So how can soil lovers hang out more with you? You mentioned your YouTube channel. I think your content is absolutely amazing. Definitely binged a lot of it over the years. So thank you for creating all that. But how can soil lovers hang out more with you?
Just go to my, I think the best thing is either go to the drberg.com or my YouTube channel and subscribe. And that way, I'm doing one video a day, which is a lot of work to do it. But I really try to make sure that it's something that people want to know about. And it's not just a fluff video. There's a lot of interesting connections between things that could actually help you, but it's very diverse. I have a lot of different topics I talk about. So, if something interests you, then you can check it out.
Definitely discovered you from the keto side of things and low sugar. I love the way that you do the whiteboard explanations, the little diagrams. Just really, I had so many penny drop moments watching your videos, and that's why I was very excited to get you on and shed some light to what you're working on, because I think the way that our community is building and now your community going down the soil kind of path and the research that you're going to do on your farm is really going to help push the narrative of soil and its power forward. So kudos to you for the work that you're doing, and really excited to continue being a subscriber and seeing the content unfold and go down more the soil path.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I appreciate being on here.
Excellent. Well, soil lovers, there you go. Until next time, make sure that you check out the links and follow Dr. Eric Berg, check out his YouTube channel, and get outside and get your hands dirty while you keep digging deeper. Until next time, I'm Regen Ray. Wait, before you hit the skip button, if you're a soil lover and love listening to my podcast, then I want you to discover more by getting access to my Patreon, where I share behind the scenes and bonus content that doesn't always make the conversations on the podcast. So head over to secretsofthesoil.com/support, where for a very small fee, you get to hang out with me and other soil lovers, where we get to geek out about soil and get access to exclusive content. It's very exclusive. No, not really. It's just a lot of fun and a way that we get to support this podcast together in order so that we can have deeper conversations all about soil from mentors all around the world. So what are you waiting for? Go on, show your support and token appreciation for this podcast. Until next time. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.